Good morning and welcome to today's episode of the St. Augustine Chronicles. Today I have with me Sergeant Michael Clark from the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office Reentry Program. Before I start with Sergeant Clark, let me cover the sponsorships. The Kookaburra Coffee, proudly founded in St. Augustine in 2012. The Kookaburra is your local home for fresh roasted coffee and made from scratch baked goods. From legendary Aussie meat pies to scones and sweet pastries, everything is crafted to pair perfectly with their signature coffees. Whether you love a smooth flat white, a bold Aussie iced coffee, or their famous honey badger latte. With multiple locations throughout St. Augustine, the Kookaburra is part of the community and part of your daily routine. From morning commutes to weekend strolls. The Kookaburra, Aussie Coffee, St. Augustine Local. And our other sponsor is my brokerage, 97 Park Residential and Commercial Real Estate. Rather than read the copy today, I'm just going to tell you that I've spent the last week doing a lot of work in Clay County, looking at larger land parcels with homes on them for a couple different buyers. And so we definitely work in St. Augustine and St. Johns County, but in my brokerage, I do both residential and commercial. I do a lot of restaurant work, particularly downtown St. Augustine. And boy, is that tricky. But we work in St. Johns County, we work in Duval County, we work in Palm Coast, Flagler County, and we work in Clay County. So whether it's an area really close to downtown for a restaurant, or you're trying to sell your restaurant space, or you're looking for residential in any of the 4 to 5 counties surrounding St. Augustine, 97 Park can help you. You can call me directly at 904-673-4764. All right, let's get to it. So, Sergeant Clark, I always start out by asking people, what brought you to St. Augustine?
Well, actually, it was the sheriff's office. I was living in Jacksonville, born and raised in Jacksonville. And my dad was a police officer in Jacksonville for 32 years. And, of course, I've been in law enforcement my entire life. My brother came here in the late 90s and to become a police officer or a deputy here in St. Johns County. And I wasn't quite there yet. I was working for a private sector job. And but I always wanted to be, in law enforcement. He started in the late 90s. They had a nepotism law at the time, so of course I couldn't come to St. John's. So I waited, and at some point they kind of lifted that rule, and I was able to come here in 2006 to St. Johns County Sheriff's Office and get a job. I originally came to be a deputy in patrol, but at the time I said, well, I couldn't really afford the academy. I can't afford not to work and go to the academy, so Corrections was doing a sponsorship for academy, so they'll let you get paid to go to the academy. So I joined them with Corrections, thinking I'd stay a few years with Corrections and then go over to law enforcement and patrol. But I got into working at the jail, and I realized that was home for me, and I fell in love with it. So I could see the benefit of me and what I can do and help others inside behind those walls. And so I stayed in Corrections my entire career.
What was it like growing up with your dad as a law enforcement officer?
Well, there was a lot of restrictions. He was tough, but it was because he cared and he saw what happens out there in the real world, and so definitely had some restrictions, and couldn't leave our street and so forth like that. But it was something. He'd come home with war stories every
was he?
day.
What was his role there?
He was patrol.
He was
entire
patrol.
Career. Yes, ma'am. He was patrol. He rode Moncrief. He's rode the areas, different areas. Not the best areas of town, but he'd come back with some more stories from it.
Did you realize how dangerous his job was?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I mean, obviously, my mom was always fearful every time he left to go to work, and he'd come back, and sometimes there was time he'd come back with a bandage on his head and blood all over his badge. I remember as a kid seeing him coming home like that, and it's like, made an impact on me, but it also made me realize what a hero he was to me, because he did keep our streets safe in Jacksonville, and he's someone I really looked up to and still do today. He actually lives 2 doors down from me in here in St. Johns County. He moved here to St. Johns County after he retired from JSO because both me and my brother were working here. So,
and he wasn't. You aren't military, right? A lot of the law enforcement people come out of the military track.
Yes, ma'am. I'm not prior military. My brother was. My dad was also, and but I took a different track when I went through the private sector. I actually wanted to going to banking or something like
Are
that.
you kidding me?
Believe it or not,
I don't
yeah.
picture you like.
Yeah, I think it was too much of the show Family Ties, with wanting to be that conservative banker and all. But
That does not work
yeah.
for me with you. No, that's not your calling.
But I realized that, because I didn't serve in the military, this was an option for me to serve my country through working with the sheriff's office. And this is how I was able to participate in serving my country. So.
And so you went right into the corrections side of it.
Yes, ma'am.
You have to have seen a lot as well.
Oh, yes, ma'am. We have seen, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the walls, and the people that we get in there. Like I said, there's a lot of people that are in there because they make mistakes, but there are also people that have been there has done heinous crimes and need to go to prison. So we're dealing with those.
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with someone that's accused of just an awful, terrible thing? How do you deal? I would think maybe this is something that you just have to master. I would think that it would be really difficult to view them as a person and not view them as the person who is accused of this terrible thing.
When you're behind the walls and you're dealing with these individuals, when I started back in 2006, it was a little bit different than it is now.
Why?
Obviously. Well, today we've reduced the numbers through reentry. We have emotional intelligence classes we're teaching. Back in those days, it was more like the Thunderdome. It was you're
hardcore.
coming to jail, right? Under Sheriff Shore, it was just a different element. And we were understaffed back in those days, and years ago before Sheriff Hardwick, understaffed. We were working all this overtime, mandatory overtime.
That had to wear on you.
Oh, it did. I mean, you worked 6 days a week. You'd have one day off, and really the only thing, and when you're doing 12-hour shifts and night shift and all this stuff, you were having that one day that you had off.
You
slept all day,
yeah,
and then you went right back to work. So your whole,
but mentally you can't recover either.
It's tough. I mean, it does wear on you, and it kind of makes you a different person when you're working so much and you're not getting those breaks, and you almost become that element inside that jail.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
How do you deal with people in the jail who are accused of terrible things? Like, I don't know. There was several years ago, there was a young girl who was killed by a young kid. And how do you deal with that when you're interacting with the person who's accused of that?
It's very tough because, you have rules and you have, what you feel like inside, you can't act upon sometimes. And you have to be able to just zone this stuff out. A lot of things that when I worked inside the jail and on the floor, I wouldn't even, and obviously some of the higher profile ones I would know, but some of the ones that come in, I didn't even want to look at their charges because sometimes I didn't want to know. I have a job to do. I'm here for care, custody, and control. I want to make sure they don't fight, they don't hurt someone else, they don't kill themselves, they don't kill someone else inside the jail. Inside the jail, it's a whole different community, and we have laws just like you do in the outside, and it's an actual culture inside those walls, and people. They bargain, they barter, they do all this stuff in between, and we have to enforce the rules and the laws inside the jail as well, just like they do on the streets here outside of those walls. So, is
the culture inside the jail the same as what you see on movies and TV shows, where it's kind of a free for all, and there's this gang culture that prevails? Is it in your jail? Is it much more buttoned up and controlled?
We run a tight ship.
That's what I picture really with Sheriff Hardwick's.
Absolutely, and it's we do that. Like I said, we've gradually went towards more a learning culture than just enforcement. Although we do enforce our rules, and we have to still be careful, and we still do. I mean, we have dogs in the jail for sniffing for drugs.
But you also don't you also have emotional support dogs something like that?
We did have those, and that was dissolved just because of staffing issues. But we do have we did have that. We also had the Canine for Warriors because we did train dogs for individuals, veterans that are suffering PTSD and so forth. And in fact, one of my employees, Becca, she's got a support dog. So we do have a support dog inside our reentry center, and it's hers that was assigned to her by the Canines for Warriors. But now we're focusing, and we did have those, but we also have the drug sniffing dogs that we do, and we've actually caught some things. Like I said, no matter how strict and how tight ship, things do get in because we do have people going on the outside. You see inmate workers and so forth like that. So things do get in, even though we do take precautions. but it has dramatically reduced. And we're also when they do bring contraband like drugs in, they're going to get charges. And now you could have been sentenced to county time. Now you're going to prison. So they do have that to be careful of.
So it sounds like it's a much better culture in your jail versus what I would picture in a state prison or a federal prison. You guys are more focused on truly addressing issues and helping the people to overcome whatever challenges they have, while still, of course, enforcing the laws.
Well, absolutely. So, I mean, we look at this, that individuals that are sentenced to us instead of going to the county, if we can fix them prior to them going to prison, which may or may not make them better, we try to fix and address those now. Because if they end up going to prison, they're still going to come back here because they live here. So now I will give, we have visited plenty of prisons here recently, and they do have a lot of different programs that they try to address as far as work programs, training, stuff like that. So when they do come back, they may be better trained at certain aspects of work, work-related stuff. But we try to address it here, and we also try to address it when we do the outreach. So in fact, this is where I met you, Karen, is when we started addressing the outreach and the homeless on St. George Street. Now we've been doing that for, what is it? It's probably 3.5, 4 years now, I guess.
Yeah, maybe even longer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and prior to that, we were just doing those that were incarcerated. But now we're addressing people that at the homeless camps, and we're going out there and offering the exact same service we do inside reentry, inside the jail, to those at these homeless camps or on the streets of St. George Street or anywhere that we come across anyone panhandling. I'll hand them my card and say, I'm here to help you. And I'll get calls back from these individuals, and we can try to get them some sober living. We just picked up a guy, and we'll get patrol calls. And one of the patrol officers called us, and I was actually at a conference last week, so I had to facilitate it from there. But we ended up getting this guy. All he was doing, he was hooked on meth. He wanted help for his drug addiction and housing. And we ended up getting him a rehab in Jacksonville. We picked him up, drove him to Jacksonville, dropped him off his rehab. The rehab gets him clean and get them housing right there in Duval. So these are things that we're doing just outside the jail, that instead of them coming to our jail and you're clogging up the court system, having the jail system. I mean, we're 100 inmates less than we were just a couple of years ago, and we're averaging about.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. And if you look at it from a numbers perspective, I mean, you're $180 a day to house an inmate times whatever inmates, like we're averaging about 30 a year, dropping every year. We're dropping about 30 a year. We've been relatively, when we started in 2006, we were holding over 600 inmates in there, and right now we're under 400 and maintaining that because of the efforts that we're doing and the partnerships that we have in the community. That's what's important about our community here in St. Johns County. We have a very supportive community with all our resources, with the SABC and with everybody that we're involved with here.
What's the proportion of men to women in the jail?
We have a lot more males. So I would say we have probably about 70 females out of those 400 average.
So I want to talk about the reentry program, absolutely, and I think there's so much to talk about with that. But I do want to go back to, so you started in the correctional facility. What did you say?
2006.
Yeah. Was that what you thought it would be when you started?
Well,
because you came from a law enforcement background.
Yes. So most people, when they're growing up, nobody dreams of being a corrections officer or a corrections deputy. They dream of being the police or a fireman or something like that. So
they want the glory part of it, right?
They want the glory part of it, right. And when I started, that was an option for me because it was the sponsorship that I said I can always swap over to that, that highlighted dream job. But when I got in there and I realized that, man, not only I was doing a lot of mandatory overtime, which means I had a higher pay rate than some of the patrol because we were forced to work overtime, and that's time and a half. So I was like, well, there's a perk there, a little extra money too, but you work for it. You work for that money. It was not a free ride by any means.
No, I would think it would have just been an incredibly challenging job.
When I first started, they obviously, when patrol deputies arrest someone for whatever reason, and some of these guys aren't good people, that we're arresting. Some of these guys are violent people. They'll never remember. Most of the time they're high or drunk. They'll never remember the patrol deputy that arrests them. But you know who they'll always remember is the person they lived with for 8 months in that jail. So the deputies that have custody of these individuals, they'll remember. So when I started this job, I'd be walking up to Winn-Dixie, and everybody's like, "Oh, Deputy Clark," all this other stuff. And I always obviously had to be careful because, some people, didn't like us because we did have custody over them. So it was a different element that I had than say my dad and brother had, because people do remember that because they sobered
You're
up.
interacting every day.
Every day we lived with them. We were there 6 days a week with these guys. And so we had to be careful of that. So it was a different element. When people ask me, how does it feel to work in a jail? I said, and this is prior to a lot of the stuff we've changed. We've done a lot of changes now. So under Sheriff Harvick, it is completely different. This is a spotless jail. You walk in there, and we've got new flooring, and it's just all brand new paint, clean. We run it tight ship. But in those days when we were doing that, it was a little bit different. When we had people that came in with suicide watches, we'd have to sit in the block with them, do the 15-minute logs on them, keep an eye on them, make sure they're not going to hurt themselves.
So I'm going to ask you, how the heck did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself?
I can't talk on that prison thing.
How did that happen?
That's a whole different story there.
How's that possible?
Yeah. But yes, it was a different lifestyle in the jail at that time. And when they asked me, and these people would be detoxing, and
that's got to be just awful to watch.
Well, if you had no experience in that stuff and you watch these people detox, you would thought they were insane. There was something, they were crazy. It wasn't. They were just coming off whatever they were. And so we had a lot of people in there detox, and a lot of mental health back in those days too. We have that same thing now, but we have different treatment. But I told them it was like working in a mental hospital. Like you see the movies of the mental hospital. That's what it kind of felt like working in there when I first started. Now it's a different element now, but those days it was.
It just seems like such an incredibly challenging thing to do day after day after day, especially when you're working so much overtime.
Right.
How do you come home in that environment that you had back then? How do you come home and you're living a normal life? You're interacting with your family normally. Right. You're surrounded by, I don't know if normal's the right word, but you get my point. How do you do that? It's like I almost feel like you had to have an on-off button, but emotionally, mentally, how do you do that?
Well, I remember like where I'm at now and where I was then is a different story. But there was times back in those days that, you like I said, you almost become that element that's behind that jail because there was so much overtime. Fortunately now with our new sheriff, and we've got the staffing that fills these positions, there's not all that mandatory overtime, but I remember times doing that, and it's like, you hold all that stuff in, you're that same person when you went home, and it's not good for family life sometimes. And so that's why it is important for people to get their time off and their vacations and get away from that element for a bit to remember who you really are.
It's almost like you deal with PTSD every day just from your everyday exposure, and you can't turn it off.
I mean, I feel there's probably a bit of that for anybody that's done that for a long period of time, or especially back in the a little bit older days that we worked those times. So I believe there was probably something, because there was times you put your hands on people all the time, and you're defending yourself against somebody that's a violent offender, and just doing these things on a constant situation. Like I said, fortunately now that we're addressing and putting a lot more education into the heads of the inmates and the individuals incarcerated, we're teaching emotional intelligence, accountability, and stuff like that, and a reward system when you're behaving and stuff. These are things that we're trying to promote because it does reduce those interactions, recidivism, but the interaction between deputies and inmates, and deputies or inmates against inmates. Our fights have gone down. Our interactions between deputies and inmates have gone down because there is that element of not only training on our end, but training for the inmates as well.
Well, maybe people just never had any exposure to that in their lives. I don't know. Maybe they never saw anything modeled like that.
I think most people that come in to work with in the jail probably have not, unless they've come from like prisons or whatever, because we do get some that come over from prisons to work in prison, but most of them haven't. And when they come in, and they're like, that is a different world. And so we do a lot of training initially. We go through our FTOs, and we do our daily observation reports. They have to sign off on, so they go through a probationary time where they're trained with a field training officer inside the jail. And that's important because they need to learn from those that have done it for years, And so they're, it's something that we push. We've got a great training unit, both inside jail and outside the jail. And we train. In fact, I've got in-service this week that we're going to be training again. So we do every quarterly, we do training, and that's we train both with patrol and correction deputy, both train together. So it's a good interaction for all of us to do that.
So let's talk about what you're doing now, which is the reentry program. Did that start during Sheriff Hardwick's time, or was that from David? Yeah. So how did that come about?
So
well, actually, let's talk really about what it is as well. How did it come about, and what is it? Because I think a lot of people don't know about it.
Right. Well, I think when you have a sheriff who's extremely big proponent on having people leave the jail better than they did when they came in, is the biggest aspect of it. The sheriff came to me and Lieutenant Melton at the time, and told us, hey, this is his vision, what he wants to do. We also had a director, Director Wilds, who had come from, she was a director over at JSO, and she had a vision to do that at JSO, but that's a different beast, over there. So she was able to bring some of her ideas into the jail here. The sheriff was a big proponent of it, and that's one of the reasons he brought her over to be the director at that time. But I remember, him telling us this, and then him coming to both me and Melton and saying, hey, there's a work squad inmate that I want you to work with, get him a job. Well, this was near the tail end of COVID, so jobs were abundant. There was not an issue getting this guy a job. So we got him a job just like this. But we realized there was a lot of different variables in there. There's housing, there's drug addictions, mental health, transportation, all these other variables that, we had to address for him to even keep the job that he's going to get. And then when you're looking at these jobs at COVID, there was a lot of jobs like food industry and stuff like that, which not to down any food industry, but we want them also to get a job like I have with benefits and retirement, something they want to keep and maintain. Mm-hmm. So they're not going out and doing something silly to get back in jail.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of variables, and I was working out of my car. Melton was working in up front. It's an office, so we didn't have a place to really, streamline all these services we wanted to do. So we ended up getting the building that's behind the jail now. It's a reentry center, and we kind of, I kind of hijacked that building a little bit. But I had that vision after the sheriff told me and told Commander Melton that, hey, this is his vision, what he wants to do, and he basically let us do what we wanted to do. And so I'm a little ambitious.
I think that's the beauty of the way Rob Hardwick leads the sheriff's department, is he leads from the front, in my experience, but he also says, I trust you.
Oh,
you go
absolutely.
do what you think is best.
And and I'm a little unorthodox, obviously, and very ambitious. So I ran with it, and
when was that?
That was
late COVID.
Late COVID. So I would say 2020, late 2021, I think, is when I really started. That's when he came and talked to us about getting the guy a job. I remember that because I was administrative corporal at the time at our work release center. But so when he does that, and I do everything I do as long as I can justify it with the best intentions, and everything I do is for the best intentions for not just the sheriff's office, but our community and the people that live in our community. And it's important because even the inmates that are in here for, say, drug addiction, because that's probably 90% of them, that drug addiction creates them to do things they shouldn't be doing because they are addicted to drugs, and addiction is a bad thing. But those are still our community members. So if we can fix and help those become better members of our community, then why not? Because if we don't, I said, to me, doing that is one of the number one ways of crime prevention. Mm-hmm. When they say
get to the root cause,
I hate that term, victimless crime. And the reason I do, there's always a victim, whether it be their family hurting because they're in jail, themselves, they could be their own victim. There's always a victim in a crime, no matter what the crime is. So if this is reducing victimhood by helping others, and getting them on the right track. I know that we did a lot of reunifications when it came to the homeless, and a lot of people, when we do those kind of things, we always try to look and make sure there's a support system on the other end, whether it be a family, a friend, a resource, or even employment. We do these things to get people where they'll have a support system better off than they are being on the streets or homeless here in St. Johns County. And, What's silly is we don't want to just bust people off. We want to make sure there's a support system. There's something on the receiving end, because that doesn't solve anything, because they'll just come back this and that doesn't work. You have to have some sort of solution on the other end. Well, so when these people make these statements like, "Oh, you're just busting them off," that's not true. I have a prime example. I've got a guy here we got a job with the county, Road and Bridge, who's about to get a promotion, by the way.
Good.
He's been on there 2 years now but he came in from Missouri. He had drug charges in Missouri. His family's in Missouri. He came down here, had meth in his car, had a hit and run, ran from us. Well, you didn't get very far, because I always like to tell people we'll be the first to catch you in St. Johns County, but we'll also be the first to help you in St. Johns County. So he came to a couple of our resource and job fairs, and I got to know this guy, about 29 years old. And so I said, this is kind of a smart kid. I said, I think he'd do well.
29. There's so much life ahead of you.
So much life. And he
you can make mistakes and change your life at 29.
And his was the people he was hanging around and getting an addiction issue. And
it's always the people you're around.
Absolutely. So me sending him back to Missouri, his family reached out to us, like, if he comes back here, he's just going to be a problem. He's still going to be on this one. So I kept him in St. Johns County. Now, I don't always try to make that a habit, because I want them back with a support system. But this guy here, I said, I think he's going to do well. So I reached out to the county. We got him a job with the county here in St. John's. He is now about 2 years in. He goes and gets a promotion. He is now a president of Oxford House, because he was in sober living. So he's a president of recruitment in Oxford House. So he recruits people from our jail now. He comes in and interviews them. He is my eyes in the sky when it comes to the Oxford House, where we place people in sober living. So if somebody falls off the wagon, or someone is about to lose their bed at Oxford House, guess who goes and sees them? I do. So I'll go to that door, that Oxford House, and say, "What's the problem? What's going on, man? I'm trying to help you out. I don't want you coming back to jail." And we work on that thing, but he'll let me know. But the funniest thing was, I called him about a month ago, because I had a guy who was having an issue at Oxford House, one of the guys we were working with in reentry. And he said, "Sarge, I'd love to help you, but I'm in Hawaii right now." I said, "You're in Hawaii on vacation?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Man, you're living a better life than I am. I've never been to Hawaii." So I said, "Well, you know what? You enjoy your vacation." I was so happy for him. I'm like, the dude's like doing well.
Yeah.
He's gone back up to Missouri to visit his family. He's taken 6 pictures of him on a tube or behind a boat in a lake. And his family's come down and visit St. Augustine, spent money at the businesses here.
Yeah.
So him going through that. Now, the best part of this whole story was I saw him. Once in a while, I'll see him on the side of the road working, because he's Road and Bridge. So I'll see him working. I'll pull over, put my lights on, and say, "Hey, Joseph," and he's like, "Hey," and I'll take pictures of him and stuff with me and him. And he said, "Well, my girlfriend's moving down here from Missouri." I said, "I didn't know you had a girlfriend." He said, "Well, we dated in high school years ago, and when I was in Hawaii, she said I was posting on Facebook, and she happened to be on another island in Hawaii, and they met up in Hawaii." Wow. All because of
how life works.
And now she just she graduated from university in theology, so she just graduated. She's moving down here to be with him. I said, "That's a fairy tale. That is something that worked out." And he said, "None of that would have happened if I didn't get caught by St. Johns County and put through your reentry center, a reentry program, and that you've had my back. You've supported us all the way through it." And to me, that made me feel like that.
That's how you do it.
Yes. And I wish every one of the people that I work with would turn out that same fairy tale. I'm like, that is amazing, and it's just she happened to be in Hawaii at the same time he was in Hawaii, but they would never have been there, or he would not have been. He may have been in prison. We don't know.
Yeah.
But because we took the chance on him to be a citizen here, he's an outstanding citizen for our community. And his family comes down and spends money here locally in our community.
Good for him.
And it's just, and so now, and like I said, he will be a supervisor with the county. I guarantee you he will. He actually did we did a video. The CDC funded it on addiction, and it was a great video. I'll have to share it with you, but he was the one we picked to have interviewed for that video. So a documentary. So it was actually really, really good to see him on there and see just those stories like that really does a lot for me. So
how do you describe the reentry program when people ask you what it is? How do you describe it?
Well, I mean, honestly, to me, it's
because it's so many things.
It is. And I tell people all the time, I said, every jail, every prison, they all have programs, GEDs and all these other accountability classes. It's not about the classes we put on. It's about the people that are on that team. We are very selective who we pick to be on that team. And I have
meaning your team?
My team, yes, ma'am. So in reentry, so we have 3 assessors, all civilian, 1 she does the females in the jail. Becca, she's also a veteran, does all the males in the jail, unsentenced and sentenced, and then Rick does all of our work squad inmates. I separated them up so they can, obviously triage who's getting out soonest. But then we have now a deputy that works for me. I finally got me a deputy that works for me, so that's really taken off a lot of stress on me over the last few years, and he's fantastic. And one of the reasons we chose him was because while he was in the jail, he was so helpful in just pulling people, helping people, reaching out to us. I knew that he cared about what he did, even without working for me directly. His name is Deputy Jones, and great asset to our program. But like I said, my assessors, they've been with us. I can call them any day of the week when they're on work, off work, doesn't matter. They will answer the phone for me because I need something. I try not to bother them, but they do what I do. And that's like I said, everybody in this county has my phone number. Every homeless person, every inmate that gets out of jail, every resource, they all have my phone number. I will answer my phone up to 10 o'clock at night. I have to turn my phone off at 10 because I'll get woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning. I've had a couple of drunks call me about 1 in the morning.
I would think you would get all callers.
And then when I wake me up, I can't go back to sleep. So I do turn it off at 10, but I will answer the phone. And the reason I do that, even on the weekends, because when I get calls, if someone calls me, whether it be patrol or someone independently, and they need help, maybe they're just wanting to get back home to their family. If they hear my voice saying that, hey, I can't get you right now, it's 9 o'clock at night, I can't get you a ticket, but if I can get you to the St. Francis house for the evening, get you a bed, I'll be there the next morning, 8 in the morning, pick you up, and I'll get you to the bus station or wherever. Sometimes it's transitional housing or whatever. If they hear my voice saying that there is hope the next day, 90% of the time it works out. But if they don't hear anything and they just get my voicemail, they may do something desperate because in desperation.
I can see that.
Yeah. And guess what? Sometimes they'll end up coming back to jail, and we don't want that. So we want to be able to help people as much as we can. It doesn't bother me to answer my phone even if I'm at home because I'm just sitting there, watching The Office or
I'm in real estate. I'm always working too, but not at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, and it doesn't bother me. I answer the phone, or if I'm busy, I say, "Can you text me?" And they'll text me, and I'll tell, "Hey, let me make some calls over at St. Francis House." SAPD. We work well with them as far as getting help with the homeless. So they reserve beds down at St. Francis House. I'll call them, get a voucher, get them over there, and I'll take care of them the next morning. But if those are things that make the difference. So when you have these programs, like say reentry, it's hard to describe it in words of like what a typical reentry program that you'd hear from like a jail or prison, because we do so much more than just that. We do with the outreach. So we actually rebranded it. It's called the Sword Unit now. And actually the sheriff was joking with me. I was talking to him. He's like, "You should rebrand reentry." Well, I didn't think he was joking. So I went with it. You tell me something, I'm going to roll with it. So we ended up coming up with the, me and Milton were just talking about different aspects of it. We came up with the acronym SWORD, which.
So we got to update our caption, Blake.
So it stands for Sheriff's Wraparound Outreach Reentry Directive. I mean, I made the whole little emblem with a sword and some wings on it, angel wings on it. It's really cool. In fact, when I get some more coins, Karen, I'll have to give you a new coin. I think I gave you one of the old reentry ones, but I got the sword coin now. But he wanted us to rename it, so we renamed it Sword because it's so much more than just reentry. It's everything that incorporates helping people, and so when you're talking about the Sword, we're talking about outreach, reentry. We've helped. Say we've got resources that need somebody down to a facility in Ocala. I'll go pick them up, take them to Ocala, take them to that treatment center, because us helping someone else helps us. So when I'm doing a favor for one of our resources, like we're going to drop somebody off at a mental health facility in Ocala, guess what? When I need help from that resource,
they'll help you.
Right. And it's all about the friendships. And I don't mind doing it. And, as long as I've got the resource to do it that day, I don't mind doing it, because when you're making those friendships, everybody benefits, including myself, because when I do need them, and, I'll call Nicole at St. Francis House, and I seem to always catch her on her day off for whatever reason, because they have off days in the middle of the week, I'll need something, and she's, "Let me reach out to somebody, I'll take care of it for you." And it's because of friendship. And if she needs something, they've got somebody there that want me to address, I'll go down there and make sure it's taken care of. So
Did you realize when you started this SWORD program reentry at the time, did you realize, or probably even when you came into corrections, I listened to you and it's so much more about people than it is about law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you realize that, or is that something you've come to figure out?
When I came in, obviously, working over the years inside the jail, and, I saw the need of certain things. And, of course, it just wasn't there. You didn't have the right sheriff at the time. And
times were different too.
Times were different. Absolutely. And so things, but there was a need. Obviously, I think I'm not the only one that probably saw it, but I just happened to be at the right place at the right time when this all occurred. And I feel like me looking at that and the sheriff's untying our hands to let us do what we should be doing in the first place made a big difference on where we're at now. And but yeah, it needed a need. But it's so much more, and we still learn every day. We learn something new, so it didn't just happen overnight. I mean, we started working out and see what we needed. So when we are the only one in the state of Florida that has the DMV room inside the jail. It's on our reentry center. So all we did with that is all we do is go and ask questions. So I ended up going on Shutterfly, creating these cups, ordering them, and dropping them off to Dennis Hollingworth at the time at the DMV and saying, hey, this is what I'm trying to achieve, and it's just a gift. It's almost like giving a gift basket, but it was just a cup. And we kind of hit it off really, really quick. Him and Jennifer Raven, who was also very important on implementing this stuff. And she's great. But getting this thing rolling where we were able to get a DMV room where prior to, and it's very important for them to have IDs, 2 forms of IDs for jobs, transitional
it's
housing.
Essential.
Most of them do not have any of it. I mean, 90% of them. So before that, we were having to take people that were only qualified to be outdoors. So the guys you see in orange cutting grass, those are the only ones we could take across the DMV to get an ID. Well,
with you guys, they can't?
Yeah, we couldn't pull them out of the jail out of security measures. So that 1 year, we only did 9 IDs, So once we got that DMV up and running, which didn't cost us very much at all, they paid for most of it. Once we did that second year, 200 IDs, 9 without it, 200 with it. So we were able to get everybody, no matter their classification, out to our reentry center, which is still a secured facility, out there, and they'll do just the same thing you do at the DMV. You're in front of the camera, you answer the questions, you want to get a vote, whatever. You're next of kin, and what they do is they do all the information there right on the computer, and then once they're done, we send the inmate back up to the block. We go across the street, grab the ID, we take a photocopy of it for our jobs, interview, and put the rest of it in their properties. When they get out, they're going to have their ID when they get released as well. Well, we need to
that just opens doors.
It opens doors with our jobs and
that they wouldn't have.
Right. So we need the second form of ID. So Social Security cards were tough for us to go to a federal building. So we ended up getting with the health department, and we have a health department kiosk in the reentry center too. So now we're getting birth certificates for them, and we're getting IDs.
I don't think you had that when I was there.
We didn't. It's been about a year now we've had it. But that now we have 2 forms of IDs for whatever they need. And that was definitely a big issue that we were having when we were trying to get them jobs.
It's just such a basic thing, but I get where that would fall through the cracks. Like, hey, once you get out, you can go get a job, but you didn't think about, but they don't have an ID.
Right. Exactly. And, it all, you
have to kind of deconstruct, I guess.
And really, we couldn't have done it if that building wasn't available at the time. That building was various things. It was booking one time when they were doing the remodeling up front. But at the very end, it was really a supply thing when they were doing electrical work, and they had mattresses and pipes, and it looked horrible in there. It looks great now, but it looked horrible at the time. But, we saw the vision. Actually, a guy that works for me, Rick, he's like, why don't we use that building? I said, that's a great idea. So we put a little schematic up. What we want to do is here's the middle of that is going to be a classroom. Then we have the computer lab. Then we have, the DMV room. Of course, we didn't have that idea at the time. Yeah. But we added that. But we learn as we go. And transportation, we're working with e-bike companies to get people, because most individuals, 99% have a suspended driver's license due to court costs, which we work with that too as well. Donors that help with court costs if they're following through with our transitional plan. They have to earn it. But at the very least, we need to get them to a job. So if we get them in sober living on that side, this over here, and their job is 10 miles away, we got to get them there. And obviously, we don't have the best transportation system in St. Johns County, so we got the Sunshine Bus, but that's limited. But you get them an e-bike and they can finance it very easily. They get them a job already, and we'll get donors that will put down payments on it for them. They can earn their e-bike, earn their job. Everything they do is earned. So everything we do is voluntary with reentry. That's what's important. People, I do believe people need to be put on probation. I'm not a big probation fan because I want people there because they want to, not because they're just taking the steps to get through it. If they're there voluntarily, they're there because they want to fix themselves, either because of their family, for themselves, whatever. So I'm a big proponent of everything being voluntary. And if it's voluntary, I typically have no issues with them. I've never had one issue inside that reentry center as far as anybody bucking the system, anybody doing anything, because they're there and what they're learning. Now, we do provide snacks and good stuff that they don't get inside the jail, and that's an incentive we do. And it's donated by Epic Cure, by the St. Vincent de Paul. They'll donate these snacks and cakes, and we give them coffee and a lot of things that they wouldn't necessarily get inside the jail unless they ordered
That's
their
okay.
canteen. I have no problem with it at all. In fact, it was something that we did because we wanted to incentivize what we're doing.
Right.
So, and that Monday,
and in the real world, real people get those things in meetings,
and they're earning it by being there, and they're earning these little things. But at the end of the week, I always ask them, "Hey, y'all gonna get everything you want?" At the end of the week, when they graduate from those classes, we do them every other week class. Graduation, I said, now I know y'all came out here because of snacks, y'all wanted those coffee and stuff. I said, but now at the end of the week, was it all about the snacks? And they're saying, no, sir. They got what they got out of that class because we input so many different classes inside this. It's a ready for release class we work with Operation New Hope with. And it's about, like I said, emotional intelligence, stuff like that. But we had a construction class, a financial education class. We have Wildflower come and talk with them. We have mentors that come in and talk with them. But these are things that are important to them. So when they get to the end of the week and they've gotten out, and I said, this feeling that you have right now, they're so excited. Most of them haven't even graduated from anything. We put them in caps and gowns. I mean, we do a whole ordeal for them because they want to send it to their family. We do this to make them proud of themselves, because they can be proud of themselves. They can hold on to that feeling they've got from that class and hopefully retain that while they not only go back to however much longer they have in the jail, but when they get out of jail, have that same thought process that you've learned in this class, take it with you to jobs and home and your family life, because we do talk about, we do fatherhood classes and these other things like that we introduce into this. Keep that when you go back and you're there with your kids. Are you there with your family? Are you there at your job? All of this stuff. So hold on that feeling, because it's easy to lose it if you don't think about it. So we do that stuff so they feel proud of it, so we do a lot of that kind of thing.
So from my knowledge, the reentry program, the SWORD program, takes inmates from inside the jail, and you identify people who want to be a part of it and who you think are, good candidates, and you try to give them classes to change their lives, give them the ability to change their lives on their own, I guess is really the way you do it. And I'm really impressed with all of the programming that you have, but I also know that you go outside of your correctional facility and you're working with homeless people. And talk to me about that, because just to give some background, I founded the St. Augustine Business Coalition in 2019. We represent the interests of the downtown business owners. And I think it was late COVID. We were really having a problem with the homeless and vagrant community. I don't know if those are politically correct words, but I don't, And so we called the sheriff, and the sheriff brought you in as well to a meeting with our leadership group, and you immediately said, yes, here are solutions that we can come in with. And we saw, the downtown business community saw such a reduction in the problems downtown when you guys said, yeah, we'll step up and we'll deal with this for you. So I know how effective you are, but I also know that you're going out into the homeless camps. You're going to find homeless people and try to address that. They're not in the jail.
Not all of them, no.
So talk to me about that part of it.
Yeah, and that's a very important part. Honestly, our outreach has outpaced our reentry, and it's because we're getting people fixed prior to them coming to jail. And I'm not saying that everybody that's homeless are going to end up in jail, but they are living a lifestyle that could potentially
I would think there's probably a chance, right? Good chance.
It's a good chance because of trespassing and other things like that. But
drugs.
And drugs and alcohol, there's the addiction issues, there's the mental health issues that's involved in that stuff. And it's if we can get out there and address some of them, and a lot of them I know, because some of them have been arrested in the past. Some I don't know. It fluctuates. People come into the county, But when you're talking about the camps, and initially when we met, we were addressing the SABC because we're talking about the St. George Street and how
The
it
downtown.
affects affects the businesses and so forth. And we wanted to address that first. But when we do the camps, and camps are all over the county, and we're interested in camps. These camps, people go to the camps and they migrate back and forth. They'll migrate to St. George Street, go back to the camps. So it's a lot of the same people. There's some regulars that just, there's some people you just can't help. But the ones that we do, I mean, we've reduced it quite a bit because our actions in those camps. So right now we get notified by either patrol, I get citizens that call me, hey, there's a camp over here behind this neighborhood, and we go address those camps when obviously it gets backlogged because there's more than people are aware of. So, but we are going out to those camps, and when we do get to those camps, we offer the services. And people asked me the other day, it's like, what about people that don't want the services? They don't want to take advantage of it. I said, because there's always an answer, no matter what. We have an answer to it. You just have to be willing to be able to do it. I said, well, I give them the option for the services, but if they're on public or private property and they are not going to be able to stay in camp there, they're going to have to move. They're going to have to continue to move on. So I go back and I give them a chance to say, but I'm not going to just get you out right now. You've got your personal belongings. It's everything they have in the world. I'm going to come back and check on you in a couple of days. And every couple of days, come back and check. And I've never had any issues because I'm not just, bullying them out of that property.
Well, that was the question I was going to ask you. When you go out to a camp and you encounter the people who are in those camps, how receptive are they to you even walking up to them?
Well, I don't go in full tactical because, I usually dress like this. It's a little less, tactical in their mind. And usually when I go up there, if someone in that camp knows me, they'll be, oh, that's Sergeant Clark. He's cool. Because they know I'm not there with a warrant. Now, obviously, there are people in that camp that probably need to get arrested, and they will. They have been arrested. But that's not my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is to see if I can get them to a service that's going to get them off the streets and better, whether it be if it's substance abuse or mental health or maybe just transitional health. Maybe not. Sometimes I've come across people that don't have an alcohol, they're just homeless. I've met couples out there that didn't have those issues. They just, there was one that was here for a couple of years, and I actually don't remember exactly how they made contact with me, but I ended up getting them back to their daughter in Georgia, North Georgia. And, it took them a while. They had a dog. This is back before I had a pickup truck. Thankfully, I have a pickup truck now because I put people's bikes and everything. I had a Taurus. I was throwing bicycles and stuff.
That's not going to work.
It was the bicycle handles the back of my head when I'm driving. But I got a truck now. I'm able to load up that truck, especially because I've had whole families that we've done, and with kids and all. I mean, this is stuff that we're trying.
So sad.
So we're helping them. That one actually went up back to Indiana. We helped them through a hurricane season to get them out of town before the hurricane came, and that was a whole ordeal. That's a whole story. We'll have to have another segment on. But this family, this husband and wife was there and had a little dog and a bunch of luggage. We got them back up to Georgia, and all we did was help them. It took a couple of days to get them where they need to be and do all the facilitating of this transport. But they text me. I still have the text. They text me with a picture of them in a pool, above ground pool, and a picture of a Saturn car that this was 6 months after I got them up there. They had a Saturn car. They were homeless in our woods for 2 years. Didn't know what to do. And all they had to do is have someone help them get back up to their daughter up in Georgia. And that's what we did. So it didn't take much to really help them. But now they're living their best life. And they're like, hey, thank you for everything you did for us, Sergeant Clark. We're up here with our daughter in our pool, got the Saturn and all this stuff. And it's just, to me, those things make me feel good. And for them to even respond months later, I got a really good one too. If you've got time, just a real quick one.
Yeah.
So this you want to know what keeps me going. This is one story that really keeps me going. There was a veteran that came to jail. He got caught with, he was got an addiction with oxycodone because he had an injury when he was either in or right after military, injured knee. He went to the doctor, got hooked on oxycodone. And we got him in here as a work squad guy. We ended up getting him a job with the city of St. Augustine. He was one of the few people that had a valid driver's license that happened to be a CDL. I said, man, you're golden. You got CDL and it's valid? You're
Right.
golden compared to what we normally have to work with.
Right.
So we got him a job with waste management with the city of St. Augustine. Well, I was under the impression, so was he, that he would start that job because he has a CDL and experience driving the truck. Well, that's not how it worked. Said he had to ride the back of the truck for a while, and he couldn't do it with his bad knee. So we ended up getting him a different job with Ideal Aluminum. And so he worked there for a couple of years, and then during that end of COVID area, they laid off a lot of people with the aluminum company, including the HR lady we worked with. They were all laid off at Ideal. So he wanted a reference for working at Kihi, the food industry.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
So we worked with him with that. I said, yeah, I'll be your reference for that. You're doing well. Keep up the good work and all that stuff. So we got him a job with that. And I said, but here's what I want you to do. If they're going to hire you with a criminal history, they can be a second chance employer for the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office for people getting out. So he worked with them to become a second chance. He's now a second chance employer for us. But he texted me. I hadn't texted him or talked with him for 2 years, right? But I still had his number in my contacts and everything else. And on Father's Day, I was going up the store or something like that, and I get this text. And it said, hey, Sergeant Clark, just wants to let you know, happy Father's Day. I'm here with my kids because of you. And he had gotten another child. He's been married now, and he's home with his kids. And on a Father's Day, randomly, I haven't seen him in 2 years. He just sends that to me because he thought about why he's there with his kids. That right there drives me to continue to help people because, like him, he got an addiction issue. He wasn't a bad guy, but he got hooked on something he shouldn't have got hooked on, and it created him to do stupid stuff. And now he's not doing those stupid stuff. He's being a father to his kids. He's being a husband to his wife. He's being a productive member of our society by working, paying taxes, and spending money in St. Johns County. So to get that on a Father's Day, now of course after he sent me that, he sent me scripture for about 6 months every day, a little bit of scripture, and but just to have that someone reach out 2 years later,
Think of you
and think of me, I was like, I am making an impact on people.
One of my favorite things about doing this show is that I interview so many people who I feel like they've found the thing that they should be doing in life. And a lot of people haven't found that. And it's not, their fault,
right.
But they're just, doing a job that's just biding time, or they're like, yeah, I hate my job, but I get paid well or whatever. And then I interviewed Ellen Walden. I know that you know Ellen, and I was so incredibly inspired by her, but I heard her story and I said to her, you've been doing this since you were a teenager. Your mom started doing this. Like, this is exactly what you should be doing. That's one of my favorite things about this show is just listening to people tell their story and thinking, you are doing what you should be doing in life.
Yeah, and it's not everybody's fault that they haven't found it, but
right.
Not saying they won't.
But it's so cool to talk to people and think, you're doing what you should be doing. You found the thing you should be doing.
I love what I do, and that's why we were talking about as far as promotions. Maybe I'll get promoted one day, maybe I won't. But my opinion is, if I'm getting promoted and I can't do what I'm doing and what I love, it's not the thing. It'd be a tough decision for me. And so it's definitely something that I love, and I kind of fell into it. Like my Commander Mountain always says, "You're the luckiest guy I know. You just fall right into things." And I guess I am blessed in that situation because I would just happen to be at that time a administrative corporal that was doing a good job at what I was doing, but it was just kind of fell into it with Sheriff Hardwick and how it worked out. And it took
Sheriff Hardwick's leadership and thought
absolutely.
Process.
Yeah.
And,
if it wasn't for Sheriff Hardwick, none of this would be happening.
Yeah.
And
he's just incredible for our county.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And I think if we ever get another sheriff, I'm hoping that we develop something under his leadership that they wouldn't want to get rid of, even with a new sheriff.
Yeah.
Because this is something I think is super beneficial for our community. And numbers don't lie. We're down 10% recidivism, or 100 inmates less than a couple years ago. And, I like to talk, depending on who you talk with, is who you speak about money. But like, it's $180 a day to house an inmate times 365 days a year. It's millions of dollars. I mean, if you're looking at 30 a year, that's $2 million right there. We're down 140 that we were from 3 years ago. That's over $10 million a year right there saving, because we're not spending it on medical expenses for people and food and everything else that we provide.
And then all of the effects after they come out, or whatever that you're changing.
Saving the ER, all this stuff that it's changing, whether it be reunification or whether it be getting them clean here in the county and get them housing and productive members, any of that stuff. And it's not 100%. But our percentage is pretty high, but it's not 100%. We do have failures. I mean, we have people that come back, then go to prison, and then come back and reach back out after they go to prison. We just had one recently that we got a job with the county, and it was something silly, driving on suspended driver's license, but he would not stay away from behind his wheel. And I told him, I said, it's a habitual charge. You're going to end up going to prison eventually. He eventually did. He just got back out of prison. He called me over the weekend. We're going to work with him again because we don't want him to come back to jail. No matter how much he messes up and keeps going, we want him to try to eventually. It might be a third time, might be a charm, and that's what we hope for. But like I said, it's not 100%, but we like our percentage ratings and our numbers that we do because we are making a huge difference. And I think you could see it in St. George, or you can see it in the community.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
But,
and just, I have toured your facility, and it's pretty impactful just to see all of the things that you have as resources there and all the programs that you have. I want to talk about, is it still the case that the sheriff's budget cannot fund much of what you do? Is that still the case?
Well, so we have been trying to put that in the budget as far as some of the outreach portion. Prior to that, we were utilizing a different source, and that was eligible to be people that were incarcerated. That was the only funding. So we did. I know Cindy and then they put on at the Colonial Oaks, giving us a couple of fundraisers, and we raised some money for that stuff. And we still take donations. We have a 501c3. We still utilize that, but we do have a small bit of a budget for some of it now. Not where I need it to be, but we also reach out the relationship we have now with the SAPD is phenomenal. And the new chief, very on board with everything.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. But we reach out to them for hey, I've got a guy needs a bus ticket. They'll pay for it. Now they only have a percentage as well. So I kind of divide it out a little bit. We use some of ours, but it's beneficial for them to spend the money as well, because no matter who's doing the work, if you can fund it, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And so it leaves them to do the work they need to do in patrol there in the city, if we can take care of it. And we don't mind doing that either. So they'll end up paying for some of those. Sometimes the city itself will pay for them. But most of the stuff is from, like I said, it was either from the jail. But our outreach has outpaced it. So we do more reunifications on outreach than we ever do in the jail.
So is it the outreach that it can't be funded through the sheriff's budget? I guess what I'm getting at is, do you still need outside funding to continue to do what you're doing? Is that really important to continue?
It is, because we only have a small amount they'd allotted us. It's earmarked for that, but it's not a lot.
But talk about why we only have a couple minutes, but I want to make sure people understand that the sheriff's department can't fund all of what you're doing.
And we will in the future. We're putting it in for the future budgets, but I have to, the reason they have to have a recorded amount and stuff, and some of that's my fault. I'm gung-ho to get things done, but not always keeping track of all the stuff we do. Some of it was where, I would get these tickets, and sometimes the city would pay for it. Sometimes a donor would pay for it. And I didn't keep track of what the rate of what that cost, because they paid for it. All I got was the ticket, not the receipt. So I couldn't give them an exact number of what we're spending. Now, I say we average about $200 a ticket and how much we do, but no proof of it. So we're keeping better track this year, so that the following year we can put that a little bit higher number in the budget and have that for our outreach specifically. And I think that pays itself off in dividends. So are you saying that the sheriff's budget can now start funding a lot more of what you're doing? It does pay for a portion of it, some of it. Like I said, I split it up. Like the city pays for it. It doesn't hurt to have the extra, because I still haven't gotten the amount that I want to request. I've got my number in my head, and then everybody else has their numbers in their head. And so if somebody listening wants to provide some financial support, how do they do that? So they can go on our website, Sheriff's Office website, go to special teams. There's a 501c3 area. You'll have to go and scroll down a little bit. Oh, this is a painful process, I'm going to tell you. I wish you guys would make this easier. I know. We're trying to get the QR codes where it goes right to that, but we are just fighting tooth and nail to get that done. Can they just reach out to you? They can reach out to me. People that have done that have just written me checks, and I drop it off to our people here. And I feel like that's easier. Right. That's the easiest way to do it. And they have a record of it, and they'll get a receipt from us. And like I said, it pays more than just the bus ticket. So what we have right now just pays specifically bus, but we sometimes need bicycle bags, because I can't always convince people to get on a bus to get back to where they need to be with their support system. Yeah. They want to take their bike. That's their only transportation. If we don't have the bicycle bags, or we don't have certain bags we have for clothing and these other things, some things are donated, but not everything. So it pays for a lot of different things that just to get them on that bus, not just the ticket. So, so these things that if people want to fund, that they can do it that way. some of our younger crowd could probably go online and do that, but I have a problem getting on that thing myself, so I know. So I'm like, I'll
There's
write
just a lot of layers to get to where you need to get to on that.
I mean, I'm older, so it's like, I'm thinking I'll write a check. People are like, you still have a checkbook? I say, I got
I had to teach one of my agents how to write a check and how to endorse a check.
It's amazing. It's important people don't use it, but I think it's a good backup, But yeah, if 20 people want to do that, you will go pick it up and give it to our local council, and they'll put it in our 501c3, and that stuff will be utilized. They'll get a receipt for it, and they can write off on taxes if they want. But it's a good program to go. We do have some donors that donate to Epic Cure for us, and we do get some funding from that too. When it comes to, when we get people in transitional housing, they don't have any money, but that transitional housing require potentially a deposit in first week's rent. So we're like, well, this guy or gal is going to really work out. I really feel confident. I'll go to that donor and say, can we get the first month's in deposit? And I'll get that money for that. So I do have donors that do that specifically, not specifically goes in the 501c3, but I've got that going for me too as well. So, and these are just people that have met up with me. We've gone lunch. They go to do a reentry tour, and then they say, I want to give. I want to be able to help. And I said, this is your best route. I said, if you can give us where we're not cutting through all this red tape. So some of the places that we deal with, when we try to ask for money, they have to go through the board, and they all that red tape. By the time they do all that, we've lost it. But if all I got to do is, I'll give you a receipt of where this guy's going, and this is the story behind it. No red tape, no doing all that kind of stuff. We get the money immediately, and I can get them that person, because some of the stuff that we're dealing, like I said, is the outreach. So it's not coming from the jail. We don't all have a lot of time. If they're in jail and they're sentenced, I know when they're going to get out. I know I got time to do it.
You can work it.
But the outreach, I come across them, and they need housing. They're going into, Livingstone Outreach, or they're going to these other sober living places. They need that funding immediately. Right. So I can go over to Epicure and say, hey, can I get this money for this reason? Here's a reason. Here's a receipt. And they have no problem doing it, because they know what we're doing is right, and they know what we're doing for our community is working. Right. And then, of course, Epicure will give us, like, these transitional housing. I'll drop food off to them all the time. Boxes of food that's donated to them, that donated by grocery stores. I would rather keep them fed and happy at that transitional house than go do something desperate, steal something to go eat, because they haven't got their first paycheck yet. They just started working, and they may get a paycheck in 3 weeks. Well, let's keep them fed so they're not doing anything silly and coming back to jail. So I'll drop, again, having a truck helps with that too, because I can load it that back of the pickup truck with boxes of food. I'm talking meats and stuff that you have to prepare, not just snacks. These are real meals. And so Sunny at Epic Cure, she's great. We can go up there anytime. She also provides snacks for our inmates here. It's just nonstop. My Deputy Jones, he donates his time on Saturdays. My son donates times for Epic when they're doing donations at the church. So it's just great friendships that we have with people that help us out.
So Sergeant Clark, I could talk to you for much longer, but my hour is done. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for sharing what you do. I want to make sure that people understand it is under the umbrella of the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. It's the SWORD program. I still think of it as the reentry program. I've seen the difference that you make, and I'm just so impressed with what you and the Sheriff's Office have created. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm just going to tell people, if anybody wants to help with what he's doing and what the Sheriff's Department is doing with this, please reach out to Sergeant Michael Clark at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office. I think that's the easiest way to do it, so I'll just tell them to do that. Thank you for tuning in today.